Yo, what's up? It's Golden Spaces, Odyssey original podcast. I know you guys are used to Nat with the intro, but she's in the Bay right now. She just watched the Warriors lose to the Timberwolves in embarrassing fashion. I got my guy Charlie here filling in. Charlie, what's up?
Yeah, doing about as well as I can after watching that. Felt real good, and then boy, did that just get away right at the end. Just story of the season, man. Fourth quarter collapses, important games.
Story. hmm
Ugh,
Story of the year.
it's tough.
It's this team giveth and this team taketh away. Like you almost have like an eerie feeling going into games after like they won a few in a row because it's like, all right, this is where the BS starts, right? Definitely not like last year. Obviously, they won so many of those games in the beginning of the season. But this year, it just feels like every time they get some momentum going, they just kind of take their foot off the gas or run out of gas and just lose games in just terrible fashion. So, if you didn't watch the game, right, the Warriors lost to the Timberwolves. Spoiled Gary Payton's return. He looked pretty good. Um, would you think about GP2 tonight?
Yeah, he looked. It looked like he barely missed a step out there defensively, which is just crazy. The way he flies around, gets active, um, the way he's able to switch off assignments too. Like Minnesota has a lot of dangerous guys who can do a lot of different things. You've got Kyle Anderson is looking to get to like his floaters and in the post, and Conley's going off of handoffs all the time, and it's looking to get downhill and create. So I thought it looked like he didn't miss a step there. Offensively, there were some times where I think it looked a little slow. He kind of didn't really know where to be in front of guys. You could tell that the coordination was a little bit lacking. But it's his first game back with the team after what 70 games at this point being
Mm-hmm.
away. So we know a lot's changed. It's going to take him time to get used to it, but we still saw the old GP hitting the offensive glass, leaking out in transition, making great cuts on the baseline to get open, and yeah, made a couple good passes too. So felt good to have him back. I think it was definitely a boost to the vibes. It's just a shame how they had to squander that at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they were squandering it throughout as well. Like, I think a lot of us expected them to, come out with a little bit more, um, come out a little bit more sharp than they did. I think it was what 29-29 at the end of the first. And then they went into halftime with a 2-point lead, but it just never felt like they were on their A game from the jump. I think Steph might have hit his first three, and then after that, he was just kind of off. And his three's been a little off recently, but Klay also didn't shoot particularly well. I think they combined, I want to say, 13 for 40 from the field. Just not going to get it done most nights. They definitely still had a chance tonight because Jordan, scored the ball pretty well, 8 for 16, 3 for 8. Then he got to the free throw line as well. But when the Splash Bros are not scoring well, it's going to be tough no matter like who you play, right? But what did you see out there in particular that I guess bothered them, tonight, Steph and Clay in particular?
Well, I think Steph was able to get his shots, but I think the Wolves played some really good trail defense. They
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of guys, especially Mike Conley, who are able to recognize I'm not going to hold this guy and deny him from getting around the screen. But if I get around the screen, I'm going to pressure him without fouling. I'm going to get a contest on the shot. I'm going to force him into something he doesn't want to do. And I think it worked enough early on that they kind of spooked themselves towards the end. You saw some possessions where Steph would get like a decent amount of separation and have room for, a mid range pull up, floater, or runner over Gobert's drop, and he just wouldn't take it because I think he was just kind of a little, maybe a little in his own head at that point. But I think the Wolves, that's the thing with those Gobert systems is you have to have guys who are willing to play well around these screens, and if they're going to get knocked off the screen, they need to know what to do in trail. And I think that's what Minnesota did a really good job at tonight.
For sure. For sure. I was watching the game and I couldn't help but think like, man, this is a lot of traffic cop, Dre and Loon trying to find these guys off of these pin downs and off of these handoffs, and they're just not getting a lot of separation. So I'm just thinking to myself, well, it's Gobert. He's, pretty slow footed on the perimeter. I think he's going to drop more times than not. But in the case of these switches, they should be able to get to the rim. Same thing with Cat. And it just felt like when Jordan was in, they went to it a little bit because, Kerr trusts Jordan as more of a, pick and roll type of guard, or at least he understands that that's Jordan's primary, form of attack. He isn't Stephen Klay running
Mm-hmm.
off these screens and stuff, so he uses them as a high usage pick and roll guard, and they were getting a lot of success from that. But when Stephen Klay were in the game, they were kind of going away from it, or they weren't leaning into it. I think as much as people would like to see. Um, is that kind of what you saw too? Like, it just seemed like Draymond was just there waiting for guys to get open the whole time, and they just weren't getting open.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the problem is they're so used to the system working that when it doesn't work on a given night, it's tough to adjust. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think you made a good point. Poole did make a lot of adjustments that really helped, but at the same time, I think there were also some possessions where you get Gobert out on the switch and then kind of take a little like 1-2 step dribble and then just try to pull up for three. And
Mm-hmm.
he did play a great game attacking. I think he went in with a lot of purpose. He was getting really aggressive in the first quarter, kept it all the way up through the end. One play I liked in particular was, Jaden McDaniels really struggling with the fouls all night. He couldn't stay on the floor. They were consistently putting him in trouble. And mid fourth quarter, McDaniels has four. He's getting pretty handsy on the perimeter, so Poole just decides to take him right to the rack, draw that fifth foul. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really kind of positive awareness sign where he's playing with an awareness of what's going on the floor around him, and I see this guy. I need to attack this guy. I need to do the best I can to like draw the positive result from the team. But I do think at the end of it, they got a little too comfortable with sort of their own types of shots. And they really needed to switch it up a bit against this team. Like you said, force more switches, get down to the rim, get to the free throw line, because that's what you can get when you're the more athletic team against a big team like Minnesota.
Yeah, I agree. And just one side of Jordan, you see positive awareness, positive recognition of situation and time and score and stuff like that. And then at the end of the game, you see turnover, 35-foot step back with 8 seconds left, and a big switched on him. Um, I mean, I keep coming back to the fact that he's still very young and it's all a learning process, but that's just a tough shot to take in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it just seemed like Steph and Klay, like you said, they were just kind of in their head with the way Minnesota was trailing them and just kind of always on their shot. So they didn't seem too aggressive in the half court at the end of the game. They kind of let Jordan take it over. Um, that's just, what do you think of that? Like that was just kind of weird to see, and then it just kind of threw everything off. That's why they got that turnover at the end.
Yeah, I think, I understand what they were trying to do. Like Clay had a couple aggressive shots down the end that were really good. He had that three coming off a pin down that gave them the lead with about 3 minutes left. So, they were still able to get their actions, but I think they recognized that Poole was creating the biggest disadvantages against Minnesota because they have slower guys who are better at trailing a guy like Stephen Clay who are just trying to get a small amount of separation where Poole can get a large amount and really punish them. So I can understand why they wanted to default to him down the stretch because he had sort of a hotter performance, but you see the danger in that when he takes the the really deep 35 footer and he's the outlet guy on that last possession and then tries to get a little too I think a little too fancy with the pass to Steph, and yeah, turns it over in a turnover that pretty much costs him the game because being in that scenario where you have the option to get a two and try to tie it or a three to go for the lead is such a different ball game than
Hmm.
up like down three, needing a three, 2 seconds left because they can just throw everyone out to the perimeter. They can deny Clay and Steph the ball. Uh, we saw that foul by Conley, which was pretty smart, but yeah, no, it really just throws things off at the end, the way that I think they handled things.
Right, right. Okay, so Dubs are 39 and 37. I think the Suns did win last night. Um,
Mm.
so we can take, I guess, a quick look at the standings, but it's looking like they definitely hurt their chances of jumping up to four. What's your opinion on the whole thing? Like, because I've remained steady on like six is kind of the preferred for me, right? And the way I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, if we get four, that would be nice, but it would be even nicer if we get four and the Clippers get five, right? And then the Suns get six or something like that. So it's like you kind of avoid seeing KD in the first round, and the
Hmm.
Clippers will be injured without home court. So I think even without Wiggins, you feel pretty good about your, you know, going into that series. How do you feel about the whole thing? Like, are you team six seed, or is it just like get out of the play in and you're fine wherever you land, or what?
Yeah, I'm with you that, I think priority one is just you have to get out of the play. And, we've seen these teams like obviously the Lakers have been surging recently. Lost a game that they really shouldn't have today to Chicago, but they're going to figure things out with LeBron getting back into the fold. We've seen New Orleans show off some pretty dangerous games recently. Brandon Ingram's on a heater. The Thunder are always just talented, dangerous. You don't want to come down to like one or two games deciding the season against
Hmm.
these kind of teams. But I also agree. I think if you can avoid Phoenix, that's ideal because as talented as the Kings have shown that they are right now, um, they've been pacing this three seed for really the majority of the season. I mean, which is kind of crazy. I think that's been lost in so much of the discussion. Is yeah, Denver and Memphis have stayed pretty like steady 1-2 the whole time, but the Kings have kept this home court locked down for a long time, and
Hmm.
they're talented, but they're by far the least playoff experienced franchise roster that they could possibly see going into this. So I think that's what that's what I think the Warriors are focused on. Is if you can get that sixth matchup and you can get the Kings in the first round. Yes, you don't have home court, but close enough. Sacramento, you'll get a lot of fans in there. It'll be more of a forgiving away game than usual, and you can just leverage the fact that you have the most experienced playoff roster going into the playoffs versus the least. I think that's just a huge advantage that the Warriors will take advantage
For sure. And I mean, everyone knows the Kings defense is not the best, right? So even on top of the fact that you don't have home court, but they are still kind of like home court, it's like, well, you're not going to really struggle to score. Um, so that's also like something kind of like last year with Denver. It's like you kind of get that tune up where at least your offense is going to get going. You obviously have a ton of pressure put on your defense with their how good their offense is, but I don't think you'll have an issue like getting guys in the rhythm and stuff like that too. So I'm fine with them where they are right now. They just got to not drop into that play in range, which
of.
would
Hmm.
definitely not be ideal. So we got the Pelicans next, right? They've won four in a row. I think Brandon Ingram is on a tear right now. Brandon Ingram is
Oh yeah,
a big wing, right? And we are missing our number one big wing stopper. How do you game plan, for a team like that? Like when you're pretty much small across the board in the backcourt, what do you do to stop a guy like Bi going into that game?
yeah. I think this is a game where they need to experiment with potentially throwing Kaminga into the starting lineup because if and obviously we don't really have anything to go off, but I feel like with each passing game, it just becomes more and more likely that you're facing the possibility of no Wiggins throughout the playoffs, throughout
Hmm.
the end of the season. So you have to start, I think, conditioning him to be like that number one wing stopper that you're going to have for the playoffs because there are some wings that Gary Payton can really guard up against. There's some that Clay can do a good job against. but I don't think they present the matchup difficulty that Kuminga has. There was a game earlier against the Pelicans this year. I don't think they had Ingram, but he put on an insanely dominant display. To like the opponent's shooting was like 1 for 15 against him. He was just flying around everywhere, like contesting shots, getting deflections, blocks. Um, so I think that's the kind of the counter you have to go to because a guy like Ingram, he's gonna get to his spots when he wants to, but you need someone who's gonna stick through it, get the good contest on the shot, be willing to fight for the rebound, and we've seen it recently. Like his shooting has been able to hold up. So I think you can insert him into the lineup next to Stephen Clay and feel pretty comfortable about the fact that he's not going to kill you. I think Kerr has said that he's hesitant because of spacing concerns for a Draymond, Kuminga, Looney front court to start it, but I think sooner or later you got to experiment with that. This game might be the time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think leaning a little bit too much into the spacing thing because depending on the team you play, Dre and Loon starting in the front court, your spacing is not going to be great like anyway,
Hmm.
right? They're obviously great passers and things like that, but when you play against a team like tonight, the Timberwolves, where they can just park Gobert in the paint and then just have other guys lock and trail, or a team like the Lakers who just parks Anthony Davis in the paint and then have everybody else play super aggressive on those handoffs and stuff like that,
Hmm.
then the spacing is going to be an issue anyway. So I do think, the Warriors' formula throughout all the years has been like just lean into the defense and let Steph and Clay figure out the offense. Um, and after a performance like tonight, I think those two guys, especially, are definitely going to be trying to look for their offense the next game and try to, get back on track and rhythm with their shooting. So I'm all for Kaminga in that starting lineup. And then, I mean, he's been shooting it pretty well, like recently, right? It's low
Hmm.
volume, but he's been in the, I want to say, around in the 40s for like the past few months or something like that. Um,
Yeah, no, last 3 months he's at like 42%, and he's hitting like high 40s in the mid range too. So it's been looking up there.
for sure, for sure. And one thing I did notice, like this game, he's making quicker reads. Like every game, his recognition is getting a little bit better. I think he had one play that I put on Twitter today where he got he's in transition and they were playing 2-on-1 and he made a hard drive towards the middle. Torian Prince, I believe, jumped straight towards him and he immediately kicked it out to Clay for a three. And it's like those type
Hmm.
of plays like that, when you show that type of IQ, the speed, the game is slowing down for him, that type of stuff definitely should like make her trust him a little bit more in big situations and stuff like that. And I just don't think the Dante at the three thing is like working anymore. Like they're
Hmm.
just giving up a lot of size. Even though Dante is a pest, he's just giving up a lot of size, especially against a team like the Pelicans. That's just you got to put some more size there. So we'll definitely see what Steve does going forward. Um, Let me see what else we got right here, man. Oh, we looking all right though. We're looking all right. I mean, like we're a game out of fourth still. I think Aiton is coming back. What, tomorrow?
I think next game, yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, and then Katie's coming back Wednesday.
Hmm.
So they're gearing up. They're gearing up. Um, how you feel about
Yeah.
their chances, I guess, against all these individual teams? Like, is there any team that sticks out to you and it's like, all right, this is going to be our toughest matchup? Like, how would you rank their matchups, I guess, going into the playoffs, as far as like who you want to see the most and like all the way to like who you don't want to see?
I think for all the reasons I've seen before, not only because it's realistic, but I think the Kings present their best matchup. Um, hopefully too, if you're getting yourself to six, it's also important that you get yourself into the, hopefully into the 2-3 part of the bracket. You can kind of like, maybe take a little advantage of seeding. Like you can, I don't, I would love to see Grizzlies match up, and I don't want to see the Nuggets early. I would rather see the Nuggets later when they're tired.
Mm.
We've seen that before. Jokic. is an amazing player, but he does tend to wear down just with the load he has to shoulder in the playoffs. So um, I still think Sacramento is the best matchup in terms of worst. I think especially given the prospect of Wiggins being out, I think Phoenix is probably the worst one that they could face early on because they have, I mean, one of the best scorer we've seen in a long time in Kevin Durant. The dude's just absurd. You need a guy like Wiggins just to, make him uncomfortable. And even if he's uncomfortable, he can still give you 30 and like just bury endless mid-range jumpers, threes, whatever.
Right.
He can play make. We've seen Devin Booker do the same. So I think that's the thing is, I think they have guys who can match up against them. Like I think Kuminga can do a great job on a bigger wing like KD, especially KD, who's less of a threat to get to the rim now. Um, and Gary Payton is tailor made to guard a guy like Devin Booker. But are we gonna see the Warriors make like the tough lineup decisions to be like, okay, we're gonna start Gary Payton and like place him on Booker and try to affect him that way, and then hope Klay can kind of play the three against KD and do his job there. Like, how do you game plan around that? If you're Steve
Mhm.
Kerr, and are you willing to sort of make these tougher lineup decisions to defend a team like Phoenix? So that's why I think they're tough because not only the on-court pressure points, but kind of the pressure it puts on the coaching staff too to adjust to that kind of talent.
For sure. And I mean, I think Steve is definitely like on board with that type of stuff. We saw last year against Memphis, he was starting Gary until Gary got hurt. Um, and he's experimented with starting lineups all year this year. I wouldn't put it past him to start Gary and Kaminga, to be honest, if Wiggins isn't there,
Hmm.
and then just put Dre at the five and put him on Aiden. Um, but that would be an interesting series. It would be fun to watch, but like I think definitely think they're near the top of my list as far as teams I just rather not see in comparison to these other teams. It would definitely be sweet to beat them though, but definitely got these other teams higher on the list. So let's move on. Draymond was in the news recently uh, for apparently throwing teammates under the bus. He had a his podcast. He had Tristan Thompson on his podcast, which is surprising to see, even though they're both clutch, I guess. But they've had their history in the past, and they brought up the topic of LeBron James being feared by other players. Mario Chalmers said he isn't. He said Michael Jordan was, and Draymond said, "I've had teammates in the past." Or he didn't say in the past. But he said I've had teammates that were terrified of LeBron James. How do you feel about that statement? Because in my opinion, I think he's correct, but it's
Hmm.
just kind of like it's definitely a weird thing to say, but I definitely didn't look at it the way a lot of other people look at it, like, oh, he's like betraying the Warriors, whatever the case may be. I think he's made a factual statement. Like we watch guys piss down their leg with open shots against LeBron James on the Warriors. So, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think first and foremost, like you said, Tristan's a clutch guy. That's what this is about, first and foremost. Like LeBron James is the reason that clutch is as powerful as it is. Uh, Draymond has like his, twice a month, contractually obligated, like public LeBron statement that he has to give. Um,
Right.
Earlier this week too, I saw he was just like, oh, nobody wants to like face the Lakers or whatever. Like I think so much of it is just kind of it is that surface level of like he's just he's a part of this agency. This agency makes the most part of their money on LeBron James and the Lakers. Draymond is just financially incentivized to like speak highly of them. Do I think it's a little weird that he was willing to like throw other teammates under the bus? Yeah, but at the same time, that was like I assume he's talking about like those Cavs era teams.
Right.
So that doesn't necessarily mean he's like, well, look who's over there. Like, is he saying that about like Steph, Clay, Andre? Absolutely not. Like, is he saying that about like Loon? No. So I assume whoever he had in mind when he was saying that is not on the team and has not been for some time. So
Right.
that's kind of the thing to me where I'm just like, all right, this is like it's weird, but I don't think it would be like a problem for the team. Looking at him for that comment. No one's like, is he talking about he's you, me, like who?
Exactly. Right. I hypothesized that he was talking about Harrison Barnes, but um, shout out to HB, but it definitely looked a lot of times like he was scared of LeBron, and he's obviously no longer on the Warriors anymore. It hasn't been for some time. Um, yeah, just funny. He's a funny guy. He's always in the news. People love him, people hate him within the fan base, outside of the fan base. But I mean, he's been getting a lot of flack this season. I think, kind of like for basketball reasons, and it's like he's been really good this year, right?
Hmm.
Like he's also playing through a ton of stuff. All of his impact metrics are definitely in a good place right now. Like, I guess I want to ask, like, how long do you think he can play at this level, right? Because we have no indication that Steph is going to slow down anytime soon, right? We do think, he at least has another season or two, maybe at an MVP caliber. And Klay since January 1st has been like almost at his offensive peak, right? Like he's
Hmm.
shooting in the high 40s from three or in the mid 40s from three again, scoring a lot. He didn't shoot the ball well tonight, but he's been pretty consistent in this calendar year. So it's not looking like Klay's going to slow down at least offensively anytime soon. Like, what do you think about Draymond, considering his game is much more physical and he's playing up a position, right?
Right. I think I think the first thing to go would be his body more than his skill
Mm-hmm.
because like you said it's very demanding. We've seen before like he's had the lower back problems. Um, those that's not a thing that goes away. He's definitely been open about like having to play through stuff before. So, the thing with him that I've come to really appreciate is uh you see all the stuff when people talk about like Lionel Messi, like, oh, he spends like 80% of the game just like walking around. And he's not walking around because he's lazy. He's walking around because he knows like I don't need to be doing anything right now. And he's still putting himself in good position. Like he's gathering data. Like that's the thing I've come to appreciate about Draymond is one thing that could give him a lot more longevity is he's so good at biding his time and he can just go from like standing still, wandering from like dunker spot to dunker spot, and then he's rotating out to the corner. He's flying back into the middle. He's like deflecting passes. He's hustling for rebounds. Like his sense of when to go and when to not go, I think is something that'll really give him a lot of longevity because so many guys in this mold they're just throwing themselves all over the place. Like they're getting involved in every play. They're absolutely doing the most. And like
Mm-hmm.
Draymond's been that at times, but I think as he's grown older, he's sort of realized like, all right, like these are the spots where I can impact the game, and let me leave the running around and scrambling and all the crazy stuff for the young guys who have proven themselves because I know where I need to be.
For sure. For sure. I definitely see that as well. I mean, we're not going to get into like the whole contract situation and stuff like that. We obviously know that, he has a pending deal that he wants to get done. He has a player option that's available to him, and there's a lot of money at stake with that, and there's a lot of money that are tied to other guys, which is going to drive the tax bill, whatever. But I think we're all in agreement. At least me and you, we're in agreement. Like we want Draymond here, for the near
Hmm.
future. And we definitely want all three, him, Klay, and Steph, to retire as Warriors because they've built this entire dynasty, Um, and we gotta ride for those three. I think as a fan base, we were a little bit too not necessarily hard on them because obviously those guys are super competitive and they demand excellence of themselves, so we should demand excellence of them as well. But I think people are a little bit too quick to kind of write Dre and Klay in particular off. They have a bad game or a stretch of bad games, and all of a sudden they're washed, and like we need to trade them and think about the next guy
Hmm.
up and stuff like that. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way, considering like all the things they've done and they continue to do. And like this team is going nowhere without those three, right? So I think we just need to established that like those three guys, the Warriors live and die with those three guys. So that's just kind of like my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, if that mindset of, oh, like they had their glory era, it's time to, you know, re-inject new talent, whatever. Maybe trade Draymond, one of them, like however it may have gone. They would not have won a championship last year. If that mindset would have won years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, you've sort of made your choice. Like you ride with this core down to the end. Even the little indicators like uh, you know, obviously it's a lot different in terms of like the financial consequences, but bringing Iggy back when he's just like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I, I love what he brings on the floor. I love that he's like a great locker room presence for them. He's clearly not healthy enough to play, and like they're
Yeah.
still like, no, like we stick with our guys, and
Right.
for better or worse, that's what they're gonna do. And I think in this case, you can't go wrong keeping these three together, building pieces around them, constantly tinkering around the edges, but give these three some weapons and you'll always find yourself with a chance.
For sure. For sure. Um, yeah, I think we had a good convo, man. Like it's definitely a tough loss for them. They're still in sixth. They're now a half game ahead of the Timberwolves. I'm not sure. I think the Timberwolves do have a better conference record by 1 game. So if they do end up tied, the Timberwolves, as of right now, have the tiebreaker. Obviously, that can change the next time the Warriors play if they beat the Pelicans.
Hmm.
But they just got to keep it pushing. I predicted 9-1 in their last 10 games. I want to say I want to say that they have to win out at this point to accomplish that. I don't know if they're going to do that, but we'll see. We'll see. You got any party
Yeah, there
words
was.
for the people?
Yeah, got to go, what, six in a row to close it out?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm pretty sure they got Denver on the road on there, so that's gonna be a tough one. I think they got
Yeah,
Sac on the
well,
road.
we'll see. Crazier things have happened.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you coming on, man. We're gonna cut it a little short today. Just reviewed the game and talk about some other things, but what you got to plug for us, Charlie?
Yeah, as always, you can catch my stuff at Claytheist11. I'm always just watching film, keeping track of our Warriors. Put out an article today for theswishtheory.com, which is where I do all my writing. Um, Talking about Jonathan Kuminga potentially having to step up in Andrew Wiggins' absence as kind of their go-to perimeter guy, and what he can sort of bring to the table offensively to hopefully replace him as well as he can. And as always, weekly getting after it with my boys on the Game 6 Klay Podcast. You can check it out. We're usually just breaking down the week's games, big stories with the Dubs. Um, so yeah, as always, thanks for having me on, Justin. It's
Oh
great to
yeah,
catch up with you guys as always.
for sure. Sure. Won't be the last. Always welcome. Um, and yeah, we just gotta keep it going. So check out Charlie on Twitter. Check out Game 6 Clay Pod. All those things. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. Golden Spaces Pod. Follow us on Instagram. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube to 95.7 The Game. All that good stuff. Nat's gonna be out pretty much the whole week. She's over there in the Bay doing the media stuff. So check out her Twitter for all the post game and all that good stuff too. So we catch you guys next time. It's Golden Spaces, Odyssey Original Podcast. Thanks for joining us.